welcome everybody to this briefing meeting with Alexandra Phillips from MRC. I'm sure you've got the program with you, so I'm just going to make a few introductory remarks, mostly for, is it Alex rather than Alexandra? Yeah, mostly for Alex's benefit. Then I'll hand over to Alex, who will give us the insights in how we can get lots of money from MRC. And then we're going to have three other contributions from colleagues from Brunel, from about the medical school, about business development opportunities, and then support for researchers. And then hopefully we'll have some time for discussion and Q&A at the end. Okay, so just for everybody's benefit, here's the outline of the timetable. I thought it might help Alex to just give her some introduction to what, if you like, the mission and vision is of research at Brunel, and then our structures, and particularly the kinds of research groups we have that might be more or less aligned to applications to MRC. So I guess Brunel is an interesting university. We're not particularly huge, but we're located in, I think, a very interesting area, a highly diverse local community. And I think in the post-COVID world, I think we're all very aware of differential health outcomes across a range of different parameters, from the sort of biological to the social. And so I think one of the areas where Brunel has an opportunity, and in fact an advantage, is thinking about diversity in what you might, in the research topic areas that are covered by MRC. And we're also, in case you're not aware of our history, we're named after Brunel the engineer. We were created in 1966. So we are if you like, applied type of institution. And although we've got a more updated missions statement, I still like the original one from the original charter, which is the purpose of Brunel is to do research that's of benefit to society, and that can either be local or global and all points in between. So that's the kind of flavor of the institution that we are. And we have research structures like everybody else. We have a number of in our college, so the College of Health, Medicine and Life Sciences, we have a number of research centres, so 8. So we have, and they're listed on the slide there. Some are more a more obvious fit, and the ones I'm going to focus upon a little bit to tell you a little bit about are the one around genome engineering and maintenance and inflammation research. But we do have MRC type activity in our group, or our centre, that's looking at technology for health and rehabilitation, and for the Centre for Health and Wellbeing Across the Life course. And I would say one of the strengths of Brunel is in rehabilitation research. We've got quite an established track record of particularly neuro rehab, so colleagues working with stroke. We've got an interesting profile around perhaps people aging with disabilities, so people with MS and cerebral palsy who perhaps wouldn't have grown old, and how you think about that. So we've got that applied dimension. And then we've also got a public health element, and in particular the Health Economics Research Group, which is, I think, a very well established group there. So we have an interesting portfolio of activities, and the two I think I will just very briefly sort of give some profile to is one where we have the Centre for Inflammation Research and Translational Medicine, which is led by Professor Gavins, and that in a sense does what it says on the tin. But infection and immunity, again, I think COVID kind of reminds us of these kinds of issues. And I think that's a group with whose interests are clearly very well aligned with MRC. And And the other group that is obviously, well, not obviously, but is fairly central is our genomic engineering and maintenance group, which has a number of different clusters that where they're working, and have looked at diseases, and particularly looked at aging, which of course I'm interested in. But they do other age groups are available. But we also have a group embedded within that centre who work around genomics and genetic epidemiology. So doing a lot of work with biobank and those kinds of research projects. So I think that's all I really want to say by way of introduction, that we have a lot of, I think, different areas of activity that would fit within the MRC portfolio, and I'm sure my colleagues are waiting with bated breath to hear from you, Alex. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Christina. That was really interesting and a really helpful introduction to you. Quick introduction to me. Thank you so much for inviting me along today. I'm really looking forward to sharing some information with you, hearing a bit more about the work that you do. So my role is I'm a program manager in the MRC's translation team. So the patch of the projects I look after includes our experimental medicine panel, and also the biologics and vaccines projects that are funded by our developmental pathway funding scheme. So the role of a program manager in the MRC is to act as a primary point of contact between MRC and the academic community. We also have strategic oversight of MRC's portfolio of funding that's in our individual areas or patches. So for every research area that's covered by the MRC's remit, there's a friendly, dedicated program manager who's always happy to help you if you've got any questions about funding schemes, the application process, kind of your eligibility, both in terms of as a researcher, at your career stage, and also eligibility of your proposal in terms of MRC remit. So today I'm going to give you a really brief overview of the remit of the MRC and how we fund projects, just hopefully useful background information. I don't have enough time to go into loads of detail about every single aspect, but hopefully by the end of this, you will have a better idea of what we do, and most importantly, who to contact to get answers of specific questions. And fingers crossed, our specific scheme might kind of pique your interest depending on your research expertise. So hopefully you will get some valuable information today. Just a bit of background. The MRC was originally established in 1913 to support medical research, and we support research across the biomedical spectrum, from fundamental lab-based science through to clinical trials, and in all major disease areas. To accomplish this, we also work quite closely with the NHS and with the UK health departments as well. We're entirely funded by the UK taxpayer. Because our funding comes from the government, we ourselves have to write an application to the government every few years via a spending review or a comprehensive spending review to receive our spending budgets. In this autumn's budget, we received a multi-year settlement for the first time in a couple of years. But as this works its way through the multiple layers of the government, we're still waiting to hear what our budgets for April are. But the mission of the MRC is to encourage and support high quality research, which aims to improve human health. We also want to produce skilled researchers and advance and disseminate knowledge and technology to improve the quality of life and also the economic competitiveness in the UK and worldwide. And really importantly, we want to engage with the public to share information about medical research, what we do, where their taxpayers' money goes. So we're really keen on engaging with the general public. The MRC is now part of the UK Research and Innovation, or UKRI. This was launched in April 2018 and is a non-departmental public body, which is sponsored by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, or BEIS. So UKRI brings together all 7 of the different disciplinary research councils, together with Research England, which is responsible for supporting research and knowledge exchange at higher education institutes in the UK, and also with the UK's innovation agency called Innovate. These 9 councils work together And being part of UKRI allows councils to maintain their identity, but also have opportunities to support cross-disciplinary research. So MRC remains a mission-oriented funder, and we lead on scientific discovery to improve human health. This new landscape particularly plays to MRC's strengths and partnerships. 25% of all MRC funding is in that form, actually. So the MRC's aim is to improve human health through world-class medical research, through from fundamental science to early clinical trials and preventative medicine. So there are 4 main foundations to our vision, which are in this diagram just here. So discovery science, which makes up 60 to 70% of our portfolio. This is, the basic discovery science, which is a real high quality underpinning of our impact on health. We've also got investing in people. We acknowledge that scientific advances critically depend on good researchers. So we invest in training and motivating and developing people at different stages of their research careers, and this has been central to our mission. We've also got new technologies and infrastructure and fostering collaboration, which is all about connecting individual researchers with one another, bringing together the right knowledge and skills to address gaps in our understanding. This also extends to partnerships with other funders, other research councils, charities, and industry partners. Around the edge of this, you can see we've got our 7 strategic health focus themes, but applications do not have to be on these topics, but they're just areas of particular interest for us, which include prevention and early detection, precision medicine, multimorbidities, advanced therapies, mental health, antimicrobial resistance, and global health. These strategic health focuses are from a couple of years ago, and it's actually some ongoing work that's happening at the moment, where we are working on updating and refreshing these, but several of them are likely to stay the same and have been a real core in our strategy for many years. So this slide shows the different areas and remits that make up MRC strategy and delivery. It's not just one huge research council. We're split into boards, groups, and panels, each of which have specific responsibilities and areas of interest. So at the top, you'll see the council. This is the MRC's governing body, and it directs and oversees our corporate policy. It's also the council who decides on areas of major importance, including the corporate strategy, key strategic objectives, and financial decisions. Below this, we've got strategy board. They set our top level strategy, budgets, and also special initiatives. And then below that, you will see the 5 different coloured boards. The chair from each of these boards also sit on the strategy board. So the different boards represent the main divisions of our research portfolio, and the roles of the boards include funding projects and programs, also our units, assessing performances through reviews, and developing new strategies and how we'll implement these. So we've got the Molecular and Cellular Medicine Board, Populations and Systems Medicine Board, Infections and Immunity, Neurosciences and Mental Health, and our Applied Global Health Research Board. The boards hold their own budgets and manage and review scientific activity within their specialist areas, which does include making the funding decisions. And each board is made up of senior scientists from all over the UK and a few international representatives as well. The research boards are all accountable to the council and brief the council with information from each of their areas, as well as ensuring that they work together whenever a cross-remit application is received. So at the bottom that overlap the 5 boards are what are known as the overview groups. These overview groups, the Population Health Sciences Group, Translational Research Group, and Training and Careers Group, were established to ensure that the research boards and other funding committees develop coordinated initiatives and activities, so we're not working in silos. Their job is to review the MRC's portfolio across the relevant research boards and identify potential gaps and opportunities. They often consult with the wider research community in universities and relevant stakeholders. Feeding into each of these and providing cross-research division funding are the translational and training programs, which I'll also tell you a little bit more about afterwards. So this chart shows how the approximate £700 million of research programme expenditure breaks down into different funding mechanisms across the MRC portfolio. I appreciate this figure is slightly out of date, but the proportions remain roughly the same. So having these different funding mechanisms allows us to have a balance between strategic direction, open funding streams, and having an agile response to new opportunities. So the biggest component, of, about 34%, are the research-led grants. These are supported through our research boards and panels, including response mode funding. Then we've got in the yellow, making up about 10%, is our kind of directed and managed funding. So this is international funding, which could be linked to specific country partnerships, translational awards where universities rather than researchers apply for the funds, such as our Confidence in Concept, which has now been rebranded to Impact Acceleration Accounts, and scientifically directed calls for proposals, which are often open for a short period of time. Some of our budget goes towards shared facilities and platforms, including strategic investments towards a national resource, such as UK Biobank that Christina just mentioned, and our regenerative medicine platform. Our units make up about 20%. These are now university-led, providing a more flexible and fluid approach to funding. And we also have our institutes, including the MRC London Institute for Medical Sciences, the Dementia Research Institute, and the Francis Crick. And then about 11% is spent on training and careers. This includes our fellowships and training grants, which is spent on training students, which is delivered through the units and institutes. But this doesn't represent the full MRC investment in capacity building. So the heart of our mission, as I said before, is to improve human health through world-class medical research. So to achieve this, we support research across the biomedical spectrum, from fundamental lab-based science through to clinical trials, and in all major disease areas. So you can see from this figure that we've got here, with 2/3 of MRC's research expenditure focuses on discovery science, and then we've got an additional third on applied and translational research. Our discovery science is split between underpinning and mechanisms of disease. So underpinning is discovery science that's not limited by the disease focus, whereas mechanisms of disease is disease-specific epidemiology or etiology. You can see from below that it's actually quite a similar picture to the charity funding and public sector environment, which is just slightly more shifted towards translational and applied research. So we fund individuals and teams of researchers who are based at UK higher education institutes, independent research organisations, NHS organisations, institutes run by the research councils, and also international research organisations. Our funding is typically 80% of full economic cost, and it can cover things like salaries, consumables, travel, equipment, and overheads and estates. So as I mentioned before, we've got our 5 research boards, and then we've got specific groups to cover things such as translation. And each board has a specific remit or area of research that they fund. So we've got our Infections and Immunity Board, which funds research into infectious human disease and disorders of the immune system. MCMB, the Molecular and Cellular Medicine Board, funds research into basic biological mechanisms or technologies relevant to human health and disease. So this would be including understanding of the etiology of disease and developing treatments. The Neurosciences and Mental Health Board funds research into disorders of the human nervous system. This includes fundamental research into the human nervous system, its normal development and function, mental illness, and neurodegenerative disease. Populations and Systems Medicine Board funds research related to the physiology and pathophysiology of major organs and systems, but they exclude the brain and the immune system, as that goes to the other 2 research boards. It also covers population health and the impact of environmental factors, including the social environment, on the health and development across the life course. The Applied Global Health Board is our newest board. It funds applied research of benefit to the health of vulnerable populations living in low and middle income countries. And it covers implementation research, scale-up activities, health services research, health economics, and research with a predominantly applied focus that does not fit into the remit of the other boards and panels. We've also got clinical and translational research funding, which operates in the same way as a board and offers a range of funding schemes depending on your needs, and I'll discuss a little bit more about them later. So each of our research boards have opportunity areas. These are opportunities that are flagged as they are areas of strategic intent. which are to be pursued through encouraging response mode applications for board-led initiatives. So if you have if you submit an application that meets one of these board opportunity criteria, these will be prioritized for consideration in board funding decisions if they are scored within the fundable range. These opportunity areas are kept for at least 3 years, but they can be assessed each year and may be changed. So you can see different ones listed for each of the research boards. So if you have an application that you think ticks one of those boxes, then it will be prioritized for consideration if you score high enough at the panel meeting. We also have MRC-wide MRC-wide opportunities that apply to all the boards. So we've got the new investigator research grants. These support researchers towards becoming independent investigators. Experimental medicine, which is understanding disease mechanisms and therapeutic targets using human participants. We've actually recently set up a whole panel to support experimental medicine applications, so which I'll mention later. So I'd recommend, if it fits into the remit of the panel, to submit an experimental medicine application to the panel rather than going for the research boards. We've also got advanced therapeutics as an opportunity, which includes cell and gene therapies, regenerative medicine, and innovative medicines. And we also have a cross-board research area into chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME research. So this slightly chaotic diagram, which I'll break down for you, gives an overview of 3 main areas of research support that you can obtain from the MRC. And these are broken down into 3 main categories: research project support, research program support, and career support, which I will now describe in a bit more detail. You can see there's some interlinking bits between the different areas, which kind of fall into both categories. So there are lots of opportunities across MRC's remit for research project funding. These typically involve funding for a single project, and the opportunities are highlighted as regular, continuous funding opportunities. So the most common route for applications for these would be the research board research grants. This is flexible support for high quality investigator-led research. They're typically 3 years in duration, but can be shorter or longer depending on the needs of the research being supported. And there's no preset funding limits. These are subjected to peer review of value for money though. And there's 3 deadlines a year for each of the research boards. There are other funding routes available for research projects, including via translational and global health funding schemes, including the Newton Fund. And research project support is also provided for strategic funding opportunities. These are usually a one-off call or a time-limited period in a specific research area defined by the MRC. Sometimes these proposals have a special application and review mechanism, but this will all be detailed on the page that gives you information about the specific calls. So these strategic programs may operate in association with a board. So for example, multimorbidity would go under PSNB, mental health would go under the Neuroscience and Mental Health Board. And these often operate in partnerships, for example, the UK Prevention Research Partnership, PRP. These also include FIC funds to support international collaborations of mutual strategic interest. These enhance the UK's ability to build new and also strengthen existing partnerships with global research and innovation leaders. So there are about 20 partner countries involved in bilateral and multilateral programs with the MRC to date, and these have included China, Canada, South Korea, and the US. Listed above the strategic programs is the Public Health Research, or PHIND, Public Health Intervention Development. So these awards support the early stages of development of an intervention that addresses an important UK or global public health issue. Studies funded by this scheme will develop the necessary evidence to underpin later development and evaluation of novel public health interventions, and seeks to encourage novel high-risk approach to intervention development. So there are 2 deadlines for this one a year. You can apply for up to 150k of MRC contribution for a maximum of 18 months. Above that, we've got the Better Methods, Better Research panel. And this is co-funded with the National Institute for Health Research, or NIHR. This methodology research funding includes methods development to underpin biomedical and health-related sciences, and also methods in research for developing methods and their implementation in research standards with the aim of improving quality and consistency in practice. And there's 2 deadlines a year for that one as well. Translational research, as I mentioned, that'll be one that I'll discuss in a bit more detail later. I'll also talk about the new investigator research grant, which are designed to support transition towards independence. And, oh, sorry, gone too far. Yeah, and also partnership grants, which kind of overlap with the research program support. So I'll just mention them here. Partnership grants, program grants, and centre grants are administered directly through the boards. So partnership grants provide core funds for 1 to 5 years to support partnerships between diverse groupings of researchers and can be used for infrastructure support, platform activities, and for bringing together managed consortia or multidisciplinary collaborations. So they're not designed to be kind of standalone hypothesis-driven research projects. They are, add bolt-ons to kind of existing research activity. And they don't support things that we better supported elsewhere by a kind of research or program grant. So the program grants provide kind of larger, longer term, approximately 5 years, renewable program funding. They aim to help the medical science community to think bigger. A program is defined as a coordinated and coherent group of related projects addressing interrelated sets of questions across a broad scientific area. So these are run through the boards, and you can apply, instead of just for a research grant, you can apply for a program grant through the individual research boards. Also falling under the research program support are the centres, units, and institutes. So these are the centres, for example, build on existing support, which could be MRC and other, to establish a centre of excellence. Units are more focused investments, and they're established for as long as needed to support a scientific need or research vision. And the institutes are where there's a series of research questions in a strategically important scientific area. And these are often long-term, multidisciplinary, and often co-funded. So now I will go on to mention kind of 2 non-board funding areas, training and careers, and also translation. So the MRC supports research careers across a whole different routes, a whole load of different routes. We work with universities and industry and units and institutes to train and develop the next generation of research leaders. We try to support individuals at really critical points of their careers to help them, jump over that gap to the next stage. And we do this through funding mechanisms, including studentships, postdoctoral positions are available on research grants. We have research staff at the units and institutes. We have career awards. And we also have a fairly recent researcher co-investigator status. So this is aimed at researchers who are currently not eligible to be a PI or a co-investigator on a grant, who are providing significant intellectual input to grant writing and the design of the project. So this route provides recognition for the contribution of these more junior researchers, and it allows them to work with the PI and co-I, but also get recognition for the work that they do. And they can spend up to 100% of their time working on the proposed research and be involved in the management of the project. And hopefully it's really valuable experience for them to add to their CVs. So we support key career stages through a variety of routes. We've got, support on grants, also fellowships and larger investments. And we try to focus these at different key career transition points. Fellowships awards are made to both clinical and non-clinical researchers across all areas of the MRC's remit. So kind of at the earlier stages, we've got our training and our studentships. So the doctoral training partnerships and our clinical research training fellows are our main route of funding these early stages. The MRC supports around 1,500 PhD students at any one time, most of which are funded through the DTPs. We've got the skills development fellowships. That's recently been discontinued, and we're scoping currently for schemes to kind of fill this gap. At the kind of the progression and independence stage, we've got the Career Development Awards, the New Investigator Research Grants, and the Clinician Scientist Fellowships, where applicants will have kind of clear plans to develop their own research niche. They've shown productivity across past appointments and are on an upward trajectory. And then at the transition to leadership point, we've got senior clinical fellowships and senior non-clinical fellowships as well. So this slide just lays out kind of our vision for how we want to support fellows. So our MRC fellowships are personal awards for talented researchers to support key transition points in their careers. And we offer a range of fellowships to kind of meet the different needs of individuals and allow training placements in the UK, abroad, and in industry. So our different kind of fellowships available are our Clinician Scientist Fellowships, where we support talented, clinically qualified professionals to lead their own research plans and transition to independence. We also have the Career Development Awards, or their new replacement as that gets outlined. We've got the New Investigator Research Grant, which is kind of supports talent, those with postdoctoral research experience and to support the transition to independence. And these are usually 3 years in duration and support up to 50% of an individual's time. So those are our different kind of fellowships. And we like to make sure that fellows have protected time for their research, but also for their career development. So fellows can spend up to 6 hours a week on other commitments, such as teaching, demonstrating, other funded projects, or they can take on up to 2 clinical sessions a week. And we, through the fellowships, provide funding for a challenging research project and ambitious programs of research, which will offer accelerated personal and career development, and hope that our fellows are kind of progressing towards fulfilling their long-term career goals, which includes our aspiration of strengthening the UK's research base. So this slide just lays out 2 of our routes to kind of towards independence, and we recognise that there are different routes available, and we support varied career paths by providing flexibility. So I won't go through all of these, but there's lots more details on our website, but it just shows that there's different routes, whether you want to go for kind of fully protected time where it's almost 100% spent on the award, or whether you want to mix that in with other research. But we just want to highlight in the middle that with all of our fellowships, there's no eligibility criteria post PhD, so you can take a different amount of time as necessary depending on your individual circumstances. There's no financial cap on what you're requesting, and we ask that research organisations clearly commit to mentorship and support to help further develop and support the fellows. So just a bit more detail on our additional career support and flexible working policies, as these are really important to us to kind of demonstrate that we are trying to be as flexible as possible. So as I mentioned before, there's no longer time since PhD as an eligibility criteria for our fellowship schemes, because we think that this could potentially disadvantage people from certain groups, those who have taken career breaks, taken unusual career paths. So now this has been replaced with a range of outputs and experiences we would expect to see kind of commensurate with the career stage, and details of those are on our website. Awards can be part-time, and the peer review assessment of the impact of career breaks. That's been highlighted to our peer reviewers to take into consideration the impact that career breaks have on your productivity, for example. We appreciate that, it's not just the time that's been taken off, but it's also, getting back to speed and doing things in the lab, recruiting and retraining. So we've got guidance for that for our peer reviewers so that that's taken into account. We've also got increasing support for career re-entry via the Daphne Jackson Fellowship, which supports those who are returning to research after 2 years or more out of research. So for full information on our career awards can be found on our website. So we've got this interactive framework, which is a bit busy on the slide here, but if you aren't sure of which which career award might be suitable for you or someone in your lab, someone that you work with, we've got this interactive framework where you can find out about different stages, different funding opportunities. And we've also got non-MRC funding options listed on this as well to give you a few more options. So if you click on the little person icon that you can see, it gives you a bit more information and a case study of someone who might be at that different stage and kind of the next steps that they could take towards developing their career. So I'll now move on to talking a bit more about translation. So this is the team within which I work. So translation is the principle of turning fundamental discoveries into improvements in human health and economic benefit. So the aim of MRC's clinical and translational research is to support and fund innovation that will speed up the transfer of the best ideas from discovery research into new interventions that reach patients, and also improve the return on investment in fundamental research. So about 30% of MRC research expenditure is spent on translational and applied research. We encourage partnerships and cooperation to support progress towards the clinic and also the development of talented researchers. These partnerships include, but aren't limited to, universities, charities, other research councils, including Innovate, and also the NIHR. So we've been actively working to address bottlenecks and challenges in the translation of health research for more than 3 decades. And since 2008, MRC has provided directed funding schemes to support early phase academic-led translational research projects, alongside a whole spectrum of specific strategic investments and partnerships with other funders and industry. We also work in partnership with the NIHR to drive the later kind of steps of the translational and clinical research pipeline. So I'll just go into a little bit more detail about the different funding schemes that MRC supports in this space. So we've got a range of targeted funding schemes which are designed to take fundamental discoveries through the preclinical and clinical development to human proof of concept studies, and all of this is central to our approach to supporting clinical and translational research. So we've got an annual budget of somewhere in the region of £70 million for this. We fund translational science in a number of different ways. So at the top, we've got our impact acceleration accounts. So these were previously known as our confidence in concept scheme, but it's had a recent rebrand. So these accounts provide institutions with locally administered flexible funding to support a diverse portfolio of short-term, well-defined translation projects. So we really want to accelerate the transition from discovery research to translational developments through supporting preliminary work to establish the viability of an approach, or to de-risk projects across the whole translational pathway to make them more competitive for later funding. So these are devolved schemes that are given directly to institutions, and they can distribute the funding as they see fit to different projects. Next one down is our experimental medicine panel. This is a relatively new panel. It was only set up last year, and this is the one that I've been looking after. So this panel provides support for academically led experimental medicine projects. So these projects must be interventional, challenge-led studies conducted in humans, which are based around a gap in our understanding of the mechanisms of disease or the mechanism of action of a specific treatment. So the scheme aims to produce new mechanistic insights, identify opportunities to modify disease pathways, the validation of hypotheses coming kind of through the research boards, through the underpinning fundamental biology, and validating those ideas in humans. So next one down is DPFS, the Developmental Pathway Funding Scheme. This is our core translational research scheme. It's got a budget of in excess of £30 million a year. And it provides funding for projects that aim to drive innovation in treatments, interventions, or products along the developmental pathway, with the ultimate aim of improving prevention, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment of specific and significant health needs. So this it's got a wide spanning remit, kind of from prototype discovery and design through preclinical and clinical refinement, all the way up to kind of phase 2A clinical trials. The next one down is our MRC AstraZeneca Centre for Lead Discovery, which is an example of one of our partnerships with industry. So the aim of this is to support academic researchers in discovering potential starting points for small molecule medicinal drugs. So academic researchers benefit from access to over 2 million molecules in AstraZeneca's compound library, as well as its state-of-the-art high-throughput screening facilities and industry expertise. The next two in blue are ones where we co-fund with NIHR. So you've got the Better Methods, which supports methodology research, and this research underpins biomedical sciences, experimental medicine, clinical trials, population health, etc. And then we also have the efficacy mechanism and evaluation program, or the ENI program, which is another one that's co-funded between NIHR and MRC. And it provides funding for slightly more later stage clinical evaluation of the efficacy and mechanisms for therapeutics, devices, and diagnostics. But for this panel, you need to have some proof of concept in humans already. So that's often, our aim is to provide that continuous funding kind of through the DPFS space and then towards ENI. So just for a little bit more detail about the individual translational schemes, we've got the impact acceleration account. So as I said, this is the one where it's a devolved scheme that is given to individual universities. So these are small, kind of almost like pump priming, proof of concept, de-risking projects. So it's kind of equivalent to seed funding. And so these are awards of 3 years in duration, which are given to an organization. So since 2013, we've supported 1,533 projects, and these have secured more than £930 million of follow-on funding. There's been 191 patents awarded and 81 spin-out companies created. So these projects have been really successful in generating, proof of concept data, securing follow-on funding, and generating new collaborations and companies. So this is just a diagram that just, gives an indication of what happens to these projects. So, they can either be spun out, they can go into DPFS projects or funding from other organizations towards the kind of clinical development. Sometimes there's kind of almost like a reverse translation where they go back to the discovery science space for further modification or for understanding a bit more about underpinning mechanisms of disease. And there's a 12% of them have had no confidence, but it's all, translation is all about that high risk, high reward. Sometimes it's worth killing projects early almost, but to know whether they're going to work or not. So we've got the experimental medicine panel. Experimental medicine can be defined to include a whole range of in vitro, in vivo, and clinical research. For this panel, though, experimental medicine is defined as investigations undertaken in humans that involve experimental interventions and aim to advance our understanding of mechanisms of disease. So experimental medicine, as I mentioned earlier, has been an MRC-wide strategic priority for a long time. And this panel has been built on previous successful models of supporting experimental medicine. Although from speaking to the community, we found that often experimental medicine projects, because they can be more risky and they can be expensive, they often struggle through the usual funding routes, which is why we have set up this sustained and dedicated support for experimental medicine researchers through this new panel that was set up last year. We've also made an additional tweak to the usual format of eligibility criteria for this scheme to provide further support for researchers in this space and help build translational culture. So there is some flexibility on the PI eligibility criteria. So you do not require a contract of employment with your research organization for the duration of the grant prior to the application. So holders of new investigator research grants and kind of fellowships and lectureships from the NIHR, charities and learning societies would also be eligible to apply. So yeah, this opened in September last year, and we have 2 deadlines a year. These are in March and September, and we've got an annual budget of £10 million to spend on awards of all sizes and durations. There are no formal limits. In DPFS, this is our kind of flagship translational scheme. The objective of this is to de-risk the development of new products towards registration for human use. So these projects are kind of goal-orientated and milestone-based. They're quite different from our research grants where you're just kind of given the money and left to get on with your own devices. The translational ones, there's a lot of post-award monitoring. It helps to de-risk projects supported by the panel. We encourage follow-on projects with these. You don't just have to come in for one project, you can come in as you go along the translational pathway. So yeah, that's our DPFS. Our remit kind of runs from the development and preclinical testing of novel therapeutic entities and devices all the way through to phase 2A. We also support repurposing studies. We're looking at kind of reformulating existing therapies into new indications, and also the development of research tools that increase the efficiency of developing interventions. So anything that is kind of mechanistic or discovery science, biomarker identification, that's better supported by the research boards. Technology development, where it's not aligned to a specific medical or clinical development plan, is more likely to be in the BBSRC or EPSRC remit. And then the phase 2B and 3 clinical trials, or trials of non-novel agent disease combinations would be better suited to NIHR. And also there's no requirement for previous MRC funding for DPFS. So just some examples of activities that are eligible for DPFS support if you're interested. If you're doing a small molecule application, you could fund all the way from hit to lead, all the way through to phase 2A. So we support the development of novel biologics, vaccines, advanced therapeutics, including gene therapy and T-cell therapy, new small molecules, digital healthcare, apps, devices, AI-enabled diagnostics, repurposing existing therapies. Also behavioral and psychological interventions could be supported. Imaging technologies, developing new medical devices, also biomarker validation through diagnostics, and radiotherapy and radiation protocols. The interventions could also be technologies which relieve a bottleneck in the drug discovery pathway. So that the support of DPFS is really broad. I'll quickly touch on industrial collaborations. So as I've mentioned before, we welcome valuable and cooperative partnerships, including those with industry. There's no requirement on any of our awards, including the translational ones, to have an industry partner. So we suggest that you only pursue them if they add value to the research and will aid in the delivery and future exploitation. But they do need to adhere to our MICA or our MRC Industrial Collaboration Agreement guidelines. So because MRC is a non-departmental governmental body, we receive our funding from UK taxpayers. We can't support R&D within commercial organisations, the development of company assets. So we need to ensure that any IP and funding arrangements are state aid compliant. So we just use these MICAs to ensure that any partnership is eligible for funding. And it's not designed as a barrier to funding. It's more about ensuring your IP, your university and IP is protected, as well as those of your collaborators. So there's more details about this on the website, but basically MICA applications can be fully flexible or gated, and it depends on the negotiation rights for any academically generated foreground IP. So that when in a fully flexible situation, your industrial partner can contribute between 0 to 49.9% of the project costs, but they do not seek pre-negotiated rights to your IP that you generate during the project. Or it can be gated, where the value of the industry contribution must meet a minimum level because the industrial partner wants to pre-negotiate on the academically generated foreground IP. There's loads more information on our website about this, so I won't go into the details. But now that I've run you through the different types of funding available from the MRC, I thought it might be quite helpful to show you how to find out more about individual calls and our schemes. So our funding opportunities are now publicised on a new UKRI funding finder website. So this is for all of the research councils, but you can filter by whichever one is of interest to you, and it will show you funding opportunities that are about to open or are currently open. You can also look at past ones in case it's one that was run previously, but you're interested in looking at the details of before applying to the next round of it. So that's all on our website just there. And then you're probably aware of this, but the application system that we use at the moment is called JES. UKRI are currently in the process of replacing this system, but it's still going to be in use for a while. Your research officers will be very familiar with this, but one piece of advice I would give is to kind of give yourself enough time to familiarize yourself with any type of grant application software. Make sure that you've included everything required in your application, and make sure you've got, you're registered already for a JES account as early as possible before starting your application. So the MRC website's got a whole load of information that would hopefully be helpful in preparation of an application. We've got all our guidance documents, information about the panel members, eligibility and remit info. We've also got a blog which is regularly updated with new posts that are written by both head office staff and also academics who make up our panel. So there's a couple that I've linked here that I think are really useful for when you're thinking about writing an application. So please take a look at those to get a bit more information. My main tip, and hopefully what you take away from today, is please get in touch with us. We're always happy to chat and give insight into what we're interested in and what schemes remits might suit your idea best. Sometimes there's a bit of overlap, and we're always discussing in between teams about the most suitable place for an application to go where it's going to have the best chance of success. So here are a few key contact points for the different research boards and funding areas, but also take a look at our website because it's got individual program manager details, who looks after which part of infections and immunity, for example, or the neuroscience and mental health board. So that will have the program manager details, and you can get in touch with them. We're always really happy to chat. It's my favorite part of the job, talking to people about their research ideas, and just give you suggestions of what you might want to consider, what you might have not thought about in terms of the audience, for example. So yeah, please do get in touch. So yeah, I will stop there. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions now or a little bit later on, whatever suits the schedule best.
Great, thank you. So thank you very much. I've learned a lot about MRC. I sit on the MRC multimorbidity group, and we've actually got a meeting Thursday and Friday this week for the AI and multimorbidity core, which has proved extraordinarily interesting. So but I only know a little part of MRC, so that's really good to be able to put it all into context. So you can have thank you, that was really comprehensive overview. You can have a little rest now while a couple of our internal colleagues make some contributions to the debate about funding, and particularly think about MRC. So first up, we have Professor Naomi Lobeer, who is the Dean of the Developing Brunel Medical School. And I can't see you, but I can see your slides, Naomi. So I assume you're in control there.
Right, excellent. I'm glad you can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, I can see you, and I can see your slide. So it's
fantastic.
A perfect 10 there.
Thanks, Christina. Yes, I've been asked by Tom to say a few words about the medical school. And I just like to emphasize this is very much sort of aspirational in terms of research, because our core business at the moment is education. I was taken back to when I did my HIV research many years ago, was MRC funded. So it took me back listening to Alex speak. But since then, I've been on a bit of a journey through gynecology and into medical education. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about my personal view as to how the medical school could contribute to research within the college and the university. And although we're not focused on research, we're very much focused on the future of health and social care in the medical school, because of course that is driving the education agenda currently. The importance of keeping people at the centre of the agenda, working in multi-professional teams, data-driven, digitally enabled. And I think what's really important at the moment is this, the emerging integrated care systems. So the traditional boundaries between hospitals and general practices mental health, physical health, NHS and third sector, those boundaries were all, the aim is for those boundaries to really blur in future. And I think coupled with that, of course, the way research is moving, very much a focus on embedding research, clinical research in the NHS, patient-centered, streamlined, again, data-driven, and really focusing on providing a sustainable and a supportive research environment for the workforce. And what a unique set of research opportunities there are at Brunel for a new medical school. I think Christina's alluded to some of this already, a research-intensive civic university with Hillingdon being such a diverse area, both in terms of ethnicity and in terms of socioeconomic demographics. I think it's the only university in London to offer the full range of STEM, social sciences, arts, all the health professions programs, all on one campus. So I think King's College would come close, but it's very much a dispersed entity. So I think it is a really unique environment here with research strengths in biosciences, public health, digital health and rehabilitation. So really exciting opportunities. This is the way, the structure. So with the Chimels, the College of Health, Medicine and Life Sciences, with Paul Helliwell as the Dean of the College, Subhas Pokhrel as leads the Health Sciences, Alex Blakemore coming to the end of her tenure overseeing Life Sciences, and myself in the medical school. And of course, the medical school looks a little bit blank at the moment because we are just starting out, but in health sciences, in addition to population health, that suite of health and social work programs and life sciences, there's biomedical sciences, psychology and environmental science. But we're hard at work preparing. So of course, our primary aim at the moment is the setup of the MBBS program to equip our future doctors for the challenges of tomorrow's medicine. Our first cohort will join in September 2022, a 5-year MBBS program. All our students will be international because at the moment we don't have funding for home students. I think what's really exciting is the way we've developed partnerships with now 8 NHS trusts. This is for the placement provision primarily, and of course this has been helped by the fact that the other nursing and allied health programs have already had students in some of those trusts already, not all. And we've got partnerships in over 20 local GP practices. And we've had a lot of interest from prospective medical students, over 1,000 applications from more than 90 countries. So I think it's going to be very interesting and exciting times ahead. And this just shows the NHS trusts that we're partnered with: Hillingdon, Frimley, West Hertfordshire, that's Watford as how I remember it, London North West, which is Northwood Park, Ashford and St Peters. And of course, we've also got the Royal Brompton and Central and North West London for particularly community and mental health. So these are, fantastic to have this range of placement providers and, access to the clinicians working there, and of course, the patients that these hospitals serve. So this is, a vision for the medical school alongside life sciences and health sciences. There are 5, as Christina mentioned, 5 institutes, university-wide institutes. I think ones of particular interest perhaps to the medical school would be the Institute of Digital Futures, which is led by Abdul Sakhtar, and Institute of Health, Medicine and Environment, which is led by Christina Victor. And then, of course, these centres as well, which I think are of particular interest, potential there for MRC projects and for the medical school as well to work very much in synergy with them. There's also BPACS, the Brunel Partners Academic Centre for Health Sciences. This was set up in 2017. And this is an established partnership with 3 NHS trusts, Hillingdon, Broadbrompton and Harefield, and Central and Northwest London, which has research as one of its 4 pillars, in addition to the workforce training, innovation and quality improvement. So that's another important structure that really it sort of sets the scene in terms of clinical collaboration with our NHS trust partners. So, you know, in terms of what the medical school could bring, I believe we are already advancing medical education and training through our team-based learning pedagogy, our plans for programmatic assessment, our focus on student well-being, on equality, diversity and inclusion. I think these are really important. They can inform research in the future, not MRC funded research, but I still think, but still research. I think we very much aware of the opportunity to grow the pool of clinical academics and to be a catalyst for new collaborations, interdisciplinary collaborations and clinical translation. There's a real need and an opportunity perhaps to develop an academic research culture among our clinical colleagues across the NHS Trust. There's a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, but we need a strategy to do that in a systematic way. And that, you know, could lead to academic career paths from trainee to senior scientists. And that's something very much aspirational that I think we could really get there. And developing research programs in collaboration with the MRC. And then I think public engagement is really important. I know Christina and others have done a lot of work on this, but I think the medical school could make a significant contribution to public-patient partnership initiatives. And just finally, these are some thoughts about research areas of interest where the medical school could really make an impact. I think in terms of health service research around integrated care systems and digital health and how they influence health outcomes, around well-being and health, well-being and mental health. Rehabilitation, already a lot of good work going on there from the physiotherapists, genomics and precision medicine, and then not of interest to the MRC, but very much of interest to me is medical education research, and very much, you know, as with all medical schools, our goal is to improve the health of the population through education and research, and I think we do have some really great structures in place and people in place to enable us to achieve that over time. So thank you very much.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. So I now invite Michael Joseph from our Business Development Manager to.
Okay. Thank you, Christina, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. The presentation and focus of my discussion would be how could Research Support and Development Office in Brunel strengthen engagement with industry for collaborative medical research and innovation. I manage the business development, research innovation and collaboration process here, focusing on healthcare and medical technology. And by research, I am from public health management background, but then before coming to university, I worked 18 years in private sector, including in large health consulting sector. So I come with some understanding of how private sector works, and also with my research background and passion for excelling in research and supporting colleagues so I always try to promote the research we have in Brunel. So focus of my discussion would be number one, which Alex already beautifully covered, that Medical Research Council's priority for industry collaboration for research and innovation. And the second part I would highlight Brunel's experience and support for collaborative medical research and innovation with businesses and healthcare organizations, and some of our successes and some of the lessons we have learned. As I said, Alex beautifully summarized MRC's industry partnership focus. But I just want to highlight that one particular point within MRC's industry charter. There is a big emphasis on translating research into public benefit. That the combination of the scientific expertise, industry capacity, and product development know-how as research discoveries are translated into therapeutics and other technologies more quickly and effectively. So I know I have colleagues sometimes do ask, hey, how can we integrate the industry priority in this MRC proposal? I say yes, this is the focus. We have to really highlight that translation side. So what research support and development office support is available for industry and healthcare engagement within Brunel? So as we know, we have different teams within our RSDO office. So business development and innovation team primarily support Brunel academics and researchers, first to promote our research to industry and to work with healthcare partners, providers, and also with new funding bodies, maybe a foundation or other industry-focused funding collaborators. And then we also support our researchers in terms of developing industry-focused research partnerships and also gather intelligence to strengthen our offer. So recently, I was working with one of our senior academics. So there was a particular question about the prototype we are developing in the proposal, how it would be applicable, and then how do we convince the potential stakeholders. So that part of the proposal, and I was reviewing and supporting the academic there. So he said, Michael, you are making my life really difficult with asking these questions. But then at the very end, we work together to ensure that translation part of that idea is reflected well there in the proposal. And then, of course, we support also for commercialization of research outcomes. Some of us knew that Brunel's COVID-19 testing device, which we led with the Surrey and with Lancaster University, now is out there for commercialization with an SME. So again, further research translation support, again, we offer here in the research support and development office. So if that's the case, so what specific support is available from the RSDO office to facilitate industry and healthcare engagement for research and innovation? So one instrument we have is Brunel's innovation voucher support. So as part of this, we would support an academic lead here to work with a small or a medium enterprise or a healthcare partner to make sure that that solution coming from the SME partner is tried, or we are able to help them to test and then validate and collect some data, and it helps this business organization to grow and our researchers to fulfill their academic commitments. Say, for example, we always say some of the solutions should be at the technology readiness level 3, so that the proof of concept at least is demonstrated in a lab environment if possible. So we also have an instrument called Business Resilience Fund. This was initiated, say, after COVID to help SMEs to innovate and strengthen their business model. For example, one of our researchers, Dr. Dan Bailey from College of Health Medicine and Life Sciences, is actually working with an SME as part of this Business Resilience Fund. So the innovation voucher, this is a small amount. People would say, what can you do with this £5,000 lot? But it would go a long way. That is the example we find from this SME, CC Bio, a UK-based SME. I've worked with Brunel's academic lead, that is Ronan McCarthy. And this £5,000 worth of voucher helped basically the CC Bio and Brunel researchers to develop clinically translatable therapies for treatment and prevention of bacterial vaginosis. Apologies for that. So again, CC Bio got 2 rounds of Innovate UK funding grants, again started with this £5,000. Then Space Republic, another SME, they had a solution before the COVID, like office ports, Pluto ports, they call. And then after COVID, they want to make sure that high street is rejuvenated, and then make sure that virus particles are destroyed if possible in their office ports. So they came to us. So I would buy £5,000, help them to initially gather some data, and then they applied for Innovate UK funding, and they got around £350,000, where our virologist, Professor Mike Themis, and our engineers, Karnik and George, so they all worked together to generate some lasting solutions. And more importantly, these small awards also generated so much media coverage. I would say 6 or 7 media coverage for the SME and also for Brunel. And then some of the other support RSDO provides is strategic industry advisory, partnership management support, relationship management. So for example, our director Teresa, she is leading a proposal with our academics to build a network to promote academic engagement with categories. So here it is co-funded by MRC, EPSRC led. So here, I had to get around 2 or 3 industry partners support. All we only have like 12 hours to get their support. But within, I can say, we reached out to a couple of them, 3 of them responded, and 2 of them said a strong yes, and then 1 in 30 minutes. These are large biomedical engineering firm, biotech organizations. Again, that relationship management helps us to build a proper engagement and then have some sort of a translation strategy with industry partners. And finally, I would say, we also have a new initiative, which I am leading with support from our other colleagues, to strengthen the capacity of SMEs for research and innovation, whereby we also want to highlight our target 5 or 6 biomedical organizations to strengthen their research and innovation strategy with the need assessment and with training, and at the end helping them to develop a convincing proposal to a potential funder or the industry partner. Of course, in this journey, always we don't get positive responses, as some of us know. We reach out to tens of organizations to get a positive response to work with Brunel, and sometimes we also don't get any response at all. So this is a journey for all of us. So the other area of the support from RSDO in the area of biomedical research is supporting the industry savvy proposal development. Why I would say this, especially because we are discussing here MRC, Medical Research Council's biocatalyst application. If some of us have reviewed this, you'll find there are questions about what is the quantitative advantage of your proposed solution? What's the market for the solution? Or what is the rationale and supporting evidence that why your proposed solution will meet the targeted need. I mean, this is coming from MRC. So again, we support our academics. Our academics have great ideas, but at the same time see that how it can also meet some of the needs out there. And again, because Alex is here, I would say let's also politely pick Alex's brain to get some insights how we can respond to some of these queries or questions there. And then I would say, finally, I would say engagement with industry or business organizations, it never stops. So we need to continue. It's not just because we are going to them for a particular funding application. No, but it continues. That journey never stops. So that's stewardship. So if there is any discussion with your partners or your funder, please do invite colleagues from RSDO or business development managers for your review of your project process discussions, so they can learn from that experience and apply in other projects. So also, please do involve them at the very early part of the proposal planning, so that we could look into what are the market needs out there and to strengthen your offer. As we all we are here, our role is to support you. So we want you to grow in your research endeavors. So yes, if you ask me, are you doing enough? We could do more. But yes, that's a passion we have. So in conclusion, I would say, we are here to support all of us. At the end, making sure that MRC's industry charter commitment is also fulfilled. And as you see here, this is very humbling to see quotation from Chief Information Officer from NHSX. that how fortunate NHS was to have worked with Brunel experts in terms of COVID-19 response management. So that is where we are here as an organization, and also our artificial intelligence work, the citation we have highest both in the US ranking and in the European ranking. Again, it's not other universities, but it is Brunel. So let's be proud of our achievements. Of course, we could also do more. So again, happy to take any questions later. Christina, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So last but not least, Roxane from our Peerless from RSDO is just going to tell us about how she can support us, and I can personally testify to her engagement in that activity and tolerance of slightly neurotic academics. Roxy, over to you.
Thanks, Christina. So yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Roxane, and I work in the Research and Support Development Office as the Research Development Officer for Chimels. So I know that lots of you who are here now are from College of Health and Life Sciences. So if at any point now in the future you're thinking of starting an application, probably your best contact in RSDO is to come to me first. So this is just a brief presentation on the support we offer all the researchers here at Brunel. So as my lovely colleague Michael here was saying, our mission is to support you, to support the applications you put in, and to support making these proposals the best that they can be to increase the research income of Brunel, to consolidate the development of strong underpinning research culture, and so we can respond strategically and quickly to new areas of research funding, to new agendas, because as a research institution, we want to make sure that our research is up to date and as the best that it can be, and that's what RSDO is here for, to try and encourage that. So how do we do this? What we try to do is, if you need it, if you need the support, we will be here to help you. That's our goal, and we're continually developing to try and make sure that we have that support for you. So currently we promote funding opportunities, we help developing applications, we negotiate research contracts, we organise research engagement events, like having speakers from different funders. We've already heard the business development that we do, and we also administer the awards to make sure that we're adhering to all guidelines and terms and conditions to ensure that we're in line with funders' terms and conditions to ensure that everything is as it should be. So RSDO is split into 4 main sections. The first is the research development section, or the pre-award side of things, which is run by Gus Bell, and which I'm a part of. So that, as I said, that's the pre-award side of things. So it's looking at, as soon as you've found a call, or you need help identifying a call. So finding research opportunities, we do the costing and the pricing for you and look at all the financials. We assist with proposal development. We advise on policies. We help develop collaborative projects with industry. We also have a large team of interdisciplinary research. So if you're looking to, you want to branch out, you want to find academic colleagues in other areas to strengthen and broaden the research that you do, we have people to help you with that. We also have the research engagement and events team to ensure that events are publicised and to bring you all in. We also have the business and innovation section, which is where Michael is from, to help build partnerships with industry and develop the research impact. Then the other side of things, which is the sort of post-award side of things, we have contracts in IP, which is run by Adam Bell, to make sure that we are in line with terms and conditions. We negotiate research contracts. we set them all up, we make sure the budgets are right, and we also have the post-award section run by Ushma, who manages all the post-award stuff, so reviews it and closes it, and ensure all the compliance is in place. So that's a lot of people, but who do you need to contact? If, as I said, if you're looking for, if you found a call or want help finding a call, these are the people. So if you're in Chimels, the best person to contact is probably me. So after you've watched this and you've all filled with excitement to apply for MRC applications, please do get in touch with me. If you're from CBAS though, my colleague Giovanna is the one to get in contact with. If you're in CDEPS or BCAST, it's Hugh. We also do have two sort of funder specialists, Dina Thomas. So if you're interested in applying to any of the European Commission, so European Horizon Europe, there we go, got there in the end. Dina is the person, and if you're looking for Innovate UK, you want to speak to Rachel, and they know everything to know about those, and will help you as much as they can. So this is just a quick overview of the sort of general grant process, from once you find the call to all the way through to submitting the application, and then doing the actual science, and then going around again once you've found a new call, and we help with all stages of that. And the way we do this initially is via our internal system, which is called PACE. So we use PACE not only to cost applications, but also it makes a record for you of where you're spending your time, what you've been up to, which is really useful for you. But it also helps us to ensure that the applications that we submit are the best that they can be, because most applications will go through 3 levels of approval. So applications that have been peer reviewed, they also have a peer review approval stage to make sure that the peer reviews have been thorough, and it's really important that we get those in, because, as I said, they do really help, and colleagues who have had funding before can offer great insight onto the advice. Then they also go through your head of department to ensure that the head of department is happy with the line of the research and accepts that you will be spending your time, and then they come back for a final approval by someone senior in RSDO. As Alex said earlier, most applications to the MRC are actually costed at 80% FEC, but you don't need to worry about finding the other 20%. The university will cover that for you, so you don't need to worry about match funding or anything like that. Timescales for grant applications. Normally, we like to say as soon as you find out about a call that you're interested in, even if you're not 100% sure you will be applying, please do let us know, because we can offer advice and support which may impact your decision. But typically we would like, for a normal application that requires peer review, we would like to know at least 6 weeks before the deadline, because it gives us enough time to properly review the application, to support you in the development of it. If it doesn't need peer review, we don't need quite as much time, and 4 weeks will do. But if it's a very large application, preferably 8 weeks. But don't, if you're thinking, oh, there's an application for 3 months' time, I'll wait to let RSDO. No, don't. Tell us now. We'd much rather know earlier rather than later. And these are just some of the things that the areas that we can help you in. So if what you're looking to do is find a call, we would really highlight research professional. We do run training courses on how to use it and how to get the best out of it. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, please do let us know, and we'll set you up with a brief tutorial on how to really tailor the results you get from research professional to suit you. We do also have the RSDO Internet, and it has some really good advice on grant managing. There's lots of examples of grants to UKRI councils, to other funders. So please go on there, have a look. If you're interested in doing in a new proposal. There is lots of advice on there, so please do check that out. You can also just contact your RSDO development officer, and we can point you in the right direction as well. We also are on social media. If you're not already following RSDO on Yammer, please do. We do post new applications and new opportunities on there. So it's a really good way of finding out more things that Brunel wants to highlight. If we're ever running any internal schemes, we'll put them on Yammer just to make sure that you don't miss out and miss an internal deadline. And we also do send out the leading edge, which is really interesting and a great way to, again, highlight different aspects. So if you're not getting that and you'd like to, please do let us know, and we'll make sure. We also do run other events like this, please do let us know if there's anything specific that you'd like us to run. Is there anything we're not doing that you currently want us to do? As I said, we are here to help, and we really want to make sure that if there's something that you think we could be doing and we're not, as I said, let us know, and we'll make sure that we do it. And that's it from me. So I think now back to you, Christina, and I think
Thank you.
Time for questions.
Yeah, great. I've got so Alex has had a nice rest. So somebody asked here, does MRC allow early career researchers to attend funding panels as observers to see how the process works?
Yeah, we actually do have an observer scheme, so you can get in touch if you.
There you are.
If you Google MRC observers, you can go along, and if you're one of our fellows, that's part of the we have a whole range of support for our fellows, including networking days, presentation days. They can come along as observers, so there's quite a lot that we try and do to help our kind of early career researchers. So yeah, that's definitely something we do.
But if we're not a fellow, we can't.
At the moment we are, unfortunately we don't have that set up yet, but I think there is information on the blog that gives a bit more of an idea about the different stages of the review process. There's loads of information online for the guidance documents that kind of tells you about the key questions that the panel is looking for you to address. You know, it's all well and good having the application, the questions on the application form, but there's often specific things that the panel are really looking for, and that can be found in our guidance documents to get a bit more info. But if there's ever anything that doesn't seem very transparent to you in terms of how long's the peer review process, do I get response to peer review, those kinds of things, you can contact your program manager and they give a bit more information about that too.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because I sit on a couple of NIHR panels, and we do have observers. So I sit on our Research for Patient Benefit, which is a series of, 10 local schemes, and we have observers go around all the time, but they're from different panels to make sure we're all being consistent. But it's an interesting question. I'm not sure whether it would change people's behaviour if there are people watching you, but I think the research councils, I'm more familiar with ESRC, but I think NIHR and MRC are fairly comprehensive with guidance about what you need to do. But I guess one of the things is that it's often fine margins, isn't it?
Yeah, and things are incredibly competitive. Yeah. So, engaging with kind of RSDO nice and early, who have a really good idea about the different schemes, there's lots of things you can do to kind of try and get that leading edge. And I'm sure they'd be very happy to help with that.
I think, I will say this because I say it all the time. The research support office here at Brunel is really good. And I would encourage anybody applying to any of the funders to involve them, but also to take external advice from people who have been successful. So that was question number one. So and another one was about if an application is unsuccessful for a board-based research project, can it be resubmitted to another panel, so the experimental medicine panel in the same year? So I guess can you resubmit stuff?
Yeah, so we have a 12-month moratorium on rejected applications across all of the across the whole of MRC and also with other research councils. So you wouldn't be allowed to resubmit the exact same proposal. If you, for example, spoken to me as the experimental medicine program manager, shown me an outline of your original application, and there are elements of it that would be really suitable for the experimental medicine panel.
Yeah.
If you have made changes, you rethink about what objective, what aim is going to be the most competitive for experimental medicine. Has your question changed slightly now that you've had to think about the remit of a different board or a different panel? If there are changes to the application, it can be the same kind of broad idea, but you've changed your approach, your main outcome. If there are changes, then it could be eligible, but it can't be the exact same title or the research things being the same. I really advise you to consider the remit of the other thing that you're applying to one, be allowed to resubmit because you've made changes, and two, really addressing the question that each panel wants you to do. So yeah, if you get in touch with me, if that's a real example that you want to talk about, then we can see about what you might change to make it more suitable for experimental medicine.
Yeah, that seems.
But you definitely can't submit the same thing again.
I'm trying to. Okay, so I've got one from Michael, who wants the answer to a question. So it says sometimes on the proposal it asks, what is the competitive advantage of the proposed solutions, sort of semicolon market for the solution? And I think he's looking for some copy and paste text to add in some guidance on, I guess, what you're looking for there.
Yeah, I guess
I'll read the next one while you answer. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I guess for that one, Michael, I think it's not just listing the interesting features about your solution, it's also thinking about the actual benefits. What is better about it? You've got to really clearly identify your competitors and kind of lay out why the solution is better. So it's a bit of a red flag to the panel if they, on reading your application, think about something that's very similar, but you haven't mentioned it. It's kind of that omission is almost like, well, have you done your research, or are you trying to, not talk about that because it's difficult to talk about? It's okay if your solution is maybe more expensive, but you can argue that it's better in terms of, specificity or any kind of information like that. And it's okay if it's a bit more expensive if you can argue that those benefits outweigh the cost. So yeah, you can look at both very related kind of avenues of work that's relevant, but also some unrelated ones. The panel would like to see that you kind of looked at the market and thought about the long-term kind of uptake of what your solution might be. Whether any extra cost is justified if you're thinking about it from kind of a cost benefit analysis. Maybe thinking about kind of patient numbers and things like that. So I think it's kind of showing that you've thought quite a lot about what might be related to your solution, and don't leave bits out just because it's hard to explain why yours is better.
Yes. Okay, so I've got one comment about feedback. So one good thing about MRC and UKRI in general is that you do get feedback on applications, which does enable you to reframe them and resubmit them. So many funders don't do that now, and I understand why, but it is helpful.
Yeah, this question is yes, and if you were to resubmit to the same board, then you need to wait for the 12-month moratorium, even if you've addressed those things. But with experimental medicine, we do appreciate that it's a slightly different panel. So we're having a lot, if a lot of people are being directed towards us because their work is better suited to us, but they do have to tweak the aims and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's I think if you're going back into the same research funding scheme in particular, you absolutely, the 12-month moratorium stays, even if you're addressing that feedback and it changes things slightly. But yeah, that would be my main thing. And
and I do believe we've had colleagues who have done that, had feedback, waited, addressed the feedback, submitted after 12 months, and then been funded. So
yeah, and with the translation schemes, it's slightly different to the boards, but we have an invited resubmission option.
Yeah.
So sometimes sometimes the panel will see an outline application and say, this is really great, but there's too much to fix there are problems that are fundamental to the project, whether that's they're not sure that you've got the partners in place, the access to the techniques, any kind of IP issues, or just kind of, have you got the right team? Like, do you have enough clinical contact, for example, for something like that? So they say, we like it, not enough to go through to the full stage, but we will waive the 12-month moratorium if you address X, Y, and Z. So that does exist in the translational schemes, including the experimental medicine panel. So that sometimes we have some flexibility where the panel invite it.
Okay, so I've got an interesting question here, which I might slightly rephrase, but so the question is, what's the single most unappreciated, or perhaps thing as an applicant we don't perhaps take, I don't know, as seriously or focus upon as much that we should? So the example here is, you know, the importance of lay summaries. Well, I sit on ESRC, I sit on RFPB, and if your lay summary isn't very good, you're not going to get any further. So that's not a good example in mind. But, you know, are there, I guess your grant writing top tips would have some hints about the things that we might think are less important, but a funder doesn't share that prioritization.
Yeah, I think one thing kind of related to what you were saying, Christina, is kind of, you have to remember that the panel, you know, the people who make up the panel are extremely experienced and talented individuals, but you might be so stuck in your niche area, you know, not everyone has the same level of expertise as you. You need to write it in a way that can be understood by people. You know, neuroscience is so broad. If you're talking about a very niche thing without kind of explaining things properly, you know, think about having a slightly broader audience. You know, you've got your lay summary as one thing, but, you know, speaking to other academics who study the same organ system as you might not have the same understanding of the particular pathways you're talking about. So kind of considering the panel are extremely intelligent individuals, but they don't understand everything about everything.
Yeah.
And then another thing that we often get on translational applications in particular that people sometimes maybe leave to the last minute is our translational awards are milestoned. So yeah, so we ask that the project is kind of de-risked by the incorporation of milestones, you know, really clear go, no go criteria where, you know, if you don't achieve the values that you lay out, which, you know, should be SMART targets, everyone's favorite. If you don't achieve those values, then we either have to apply for a change to the project. The project could be wrapped up because you've not achieved what you need to progress. And often some people just like, oh, I'll put one in after 12 months, 24 and 36, and that's fine. But you really have to think about, it really gives the panel confidence if you've thought exactly about at what point you have to ask a critical question to decide whether the project can continue.
Yeah. Yes, speaking as somebody who's just writing a work plan, where it's like, really, I've lost interest in this whole thing now. So, so Elena would like to know what does a successful application typically need to score for? Yeah, I guess yeah.
That's quite a tricky one, and it does really vary between different panels. Some panels are seen to be maybe you have to score higher to get through. It depends on the scoring of the panels. We've got on our website, our panels all score between 1 and 10, from unfundable to internationally competitive, you know, incredible science. And anything above a 7 or above is technically fundable if we had unlimited pots of money, but we don't. So occasionally we have to go into ranking, and, you know, sometimes we can't fund all the 7s, and sometimes we can't fund all the 8s. And so then we have to rank and see what we can do to fund within those bands. So I'm afraid that does really vary between the panels. But we have on our website, I will try and find the link and I can send it to Roxy, where you can look up for every panel and every panel meeting, you can look up all of the you can see what all the applications scored. They're all anonymized, so you don't know who the applicant was or the title, but it will show you how many fell into the category of 7 and how many fell into the category of 6, and which ones we were able to fund. So you can have a little dig around on panels that you're particularly interested in applying to. So that could be helpful if you wanted to do a bit of digging around. I'll find the link, Roxy. I can't remember the thing you've got to Google.
And the same goes for ESRC. You can see exactly the same thing. So you can see how many 7s got funded, and it's quite rare for a 7 to be to be funded for ESRC because they don't have as much money as you do. So perhaps for them. So so the question about how much panels interfere with the budget. So do they reduce the amount awarded?
So I have only sat on translational panels, and we are slightly different. But I can tell you about translational panels if that's helpful. So what we have is, everything, we don't have a funding limit that you can, we don't say every project has to be below this many hundreds of £1,000s. So you can apply for, we've awarded awards up to 3.5 million. I think actually we've had a 4 million one. So we've got a huge range of project sizes, and you have to carefully justify all the elements of it. Particularly with DPFS, sometimes with milestones, the panel might say, this piece of work, we're very confident you can achieve this. We think this is reasonable. But actually milestone 3, we don't think is necessary in this project. And so sometimes the panel might say, as part of the award in principle criteria, take out this piece of work. I don't think you need this. So sometimes there is tweaking that the panel suggest. I don't know how it works with the research boards, I'm afraid, but with translation, it doesn't happen that often. And often the awards in principle are more about just getting a bit of extra clarity on things. But it is possible that sometimes the panel will say, we don't think this piece of work is necessary. But often I think with translation, at least, the kind of outline to full stage, because they're 2-stage applications, you get that feedback from the panel, so they suggest that things are added in or taken out. But yeah, but I'm not sure about the research boards because it's a slightly different process. So sorry about that, but get in touch with a program manager for the board that you're interested in. And they can help.
From an ESRC and an NIHR perspective, I've seen both things happen. So we'll fund this, but we're not funding that work package because somebody's already done a literature review in widgetology or whatever it is, or we'll fund this and we're going to give you some more because you need to X, Y, and Z. But I would say both in most of my experience, they fund what's asked for, with the exception of sometimes people have asked for things that are not eligible. So, but generally, I think they do it. What else? So again, there's the what else have I? So that was the funding. Somebody was asking about the best way to approach the MRC when seeking match funding to complement funds from another funder. I don't know, do you do that?
I don't think we do that. You could come in with funding already from, I don't think we really do that very much. You could come in with a partner that could be I don't think I've seen it, but I don't know why you couldn't come in with funding with a charity partner. This is more with industry we have, but we're not against funding. If, I don't know, if you have a special relationship with a charity that is particularly interested in your work and you say they're contributing X, Y, and Z as a project partner, but it's not necessarily matched funding. It's usually through kind of strategic opportunities that we've already set up. So we've partnered with EP on a special technology one, for example, or we partnered with what other ones we've had somewhere. It's looking at, I'm trying to think of other ones we've got, but sometimes we partner specifically with other research councils or charities. We've got a pain consortium, I think, which has got versus arthritis in there and things like that. So they're usually already set up schemes where we've partnered and we then co-fund on that one.
And I guess, the next one I've got is about timetables, about when calls are published. And that and the problems that can sometimes generate around the academic year.
And I do appreciate that sometimes they can, especially when you've got internal deadlines that aren't just our deadlines. You've got to stick with what RSDO can work with and things like that, and approval of finances and stuff. So I think we've got the best thing I can think of, we've got a mailing list where you can receive information about our funding opportunities, follow us on social media, staying in touch with your research services office. but I do appreciate it can be difficult to do those, and sometimes money becomes available that we want to spend in a specific way, but we have timeframes as well for us, which I know doesn't make it better for you guys, but that is sometimes, we are always very conscious of trying to avoid deadlines over holidays and things like that where possible, but sometimes the funding money has to go out or else it gets lost into the ether of government somewhere.
It may be my impression, but I think we are getting more sort of pre-call announcements than perhaps we did in the past. Or maybe I've just become more conscious of them.
Yeah, it's something we are really conscious that it is working to these tight deadlines is really difficult for people, especially when people have got other responsibilities. So yeah, sign up to our mailing list, and the funding finder has details of upcoming calls. So the call may not be open, so you can't access chairs, but you can go through the guidance, get ideas together, have a chat with RSDO, and see what you can start to pull together as much as possible in advance.
Yeah, you can do your planning and set up your teams and think about that. And of course, I keep getting the nomenclature wrong because I just do, but your panels have recurrent deadlines.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think my view on some of these things, that some of the special calls on, pain control in left-handed mice or whatever it is, are massively oversubscribed often, and so sometimes you're better off looking at the calls that are regular, like RFPB has 3 submissions a year, and you know when they are, and you can work around those. But,
and we definitely recommend that if it's a rolling call, to sometimes say you've just seen it and you've just had this idea and you want to submit an application, to always remember that we do have this 12-month moratorium on resubmission. So sometimes it might be better to wait 3 or 4 months and submit a better application a bit later on, rather than rushing and then potentially being turned down by the panel and told to wait another year. Yeah.
So I think always talk to RSDO is my maxim for life. They're very, very experienced and give good advice, even if it isn't the thing you necessarily want to hear, but usually fairly sensible. I can't see any more. Let me just check. See that I haven't missed anybody. Well,
if anyone has any questions that they think of later, because I always do that, a talk ends and I've forgotten to ask a question, just drop me an email or drop Roxy an email, and then or Tom, and they can forward it to me, or I can point you in the right direction of someone within MRC who knows more than me.
So I can make a last call for anybody who wants to put anything into the chat apart from people saying thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Okay, which deadline is less competitive? Well,
It's impossible to say. I'm afraid it depends what comes in. There could just be 4 other applications with yours, but if they're all super, no, 4 is not a number we get. But it always depends on the situation. Like sometimes there might be loads of applications, but maybe they're not as strong as when they last time when there was 25% less and they were all really strong. So sorry, it's impossible to say.
And it's not just number, it's quality.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You may only have 5 applications, and then mine makes it 6. But if they're all scoring 8 and 9, and I score 7, and you've only got enough money for 5.
Exactly.
I think I would assume every deadline is competitive, and then work backwards. I can't see anything else, so I think it's more or less 4 o'clock. Well, none of the clocks in this house tell the same time. So, okay. So how many are funded per call? Depends, and there's a caveat saying that it depends on the overall budget.
And it depends on there could be 10 applications that are less than $500,000, or there could be it depends on the size of the ones that score higher than you. It's not I don't think we ever have a setup where we say we're going to fund 5. We always do it by, we've got 10 million for this meeting and we'll fund as many as we can for that 10 million. So I'm afraid that completely varies depending on the value of the awards.
And I mean, certainly the last ESRC call on healthy aging grand challenge thing, I think there were probably something like 90 applications, 25 were shortlisted, and they funded 6. And that was the budget. They had whatever it was, I don't know, 8 million, and that's what they could fund. So it is. I think it's the budget that is the limiting factor. And to quote a previous Prime Minister, there isn't a magic money tree in the room when you're sitting there to make those decisions. So very competitive, but that's not to say we won't be successful.
No, definitely.
Yeah, good research gets funded eventually. Okay, so I think that's we've taken, you've been very generous with your time and generous with your offers to respond to people. And I think the comment of the day is, it's a shame there is no magic money tree, but if there isn't any magic money tree, I'm sure that RSDO and our colleagues can help plant one and grow one for us. So thanks everybody for coming along. Thank you to the other Brunel contributors for your time. I hope the people who've joined us on the call have found it helpful. And
Yes,
most of all,
indeed.
Alex, thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate it. And I look forward to us deluging you with applications that you'll fund. So thank you very much, everybody. Time for tea, I think.